Folks, let's get into it. It's time for the damage report, all right? It's time to see what we got going on. That's right. It's time for us to talk about Donald Trump's first week in office. Um it's the end of week 1. I haven't really talked that much about what he's been up to, what damage has been done, what issues are on the horizon, what is going to roll out here. And one thing I will say is that I think we need to take a look at what he's been doing. So, um, what is going on, right? Well, there's some bad stuff, to say the least. So, number one, the Justice Department has dropped charges against Dr. Ethan Heim, the Dallas doctor accused of leaking the sensitive records of children not under his care who received gender transition care at Texas Children's Hospital, and giving them to Christopher Rufo. So, you all might remember Christopher Rufo. He's one of the people who is responsible for the trans kids in sports uh, conversation being injected into the Republican consciousness. There was a scandal several years back where Texas Children's had a worker who violated HIPAA laws and gave the medical information of children at the clinic to Christopher Rufo. Yes, this is Christopher Rufo is the same guy who popularized DEI, the same guy who popularized wokeness, the same guy who popularized critical race theory. He's been the guy who comes up with all the major Republican talking points for the last, I don't know, like 8 years, you know? He's been one of those main guys. He's been one of the behind the scenes villains, right? And so that's not great. A number of really important cases that the Justice Department was pursuing have been dropped now. One of them is also pretty interesting here. Let me pull it up. I think it's right here. Yes. Here's another one. Trump disbands cybersecurity board investigating massive Chinese phone system hack. This is actually one of the largest cybersecurity hacks in American history that was pulled off. Um, and frankly, it happened last fall, and it's really bad. And in fact, it's so bad that we had to have an investigative body look into it. So there was a cybersecurity board investigating this hack in order to figure out how big it truly was. And before we actually have that information, for some reason, Donald Trump has disbanded the group of people who have been investigating this. So we will never know exactly how big this hack was. And this was done, by the way, by the Chinese hacking group called Salt Typhoon. Um, and it used the United States' Kalia phone wiretapping system. And it was able to do this via this backdoor that they created to gain essentially an unbelievable amount of access to the entire system of US phones for months. So to give you to really give you a clue here, They were able to listen through our phones for months across most phones in the United States. And we will never know the extent to which this damage existed or was propagated. And it is, they're just one of these things where I'm like, why did this happen? Like, why are we dropping it? You know, like, Republicans have been going on and on and on about the military risk of China, and yet they're dropping this. They're going on and on about the threat of TikTok, and yet they're dropping this. So it's very bizarre, and I don't really have any way of wrapping up this particular loose end. This is just a thing that happened this week. You know? So what else has been going on? Well, another thing that has been going on, and this may or may not have been on your radar, but one of the first things that Donald Trump did was revoke workplace discrimination rules that have been in place since 1965 under LBJ. What this basically means is that with this executive order, well, let me put it this way. The original executive order prohibited federal contractors from discriminating on the basis of race, color, religion, sexuality, sex, gender identity, etc., right? So basically blanket anti-discrimination protections for anyone who worked with the federal government. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that that was established by an executive order. And one of the very important things you need to know about executive orders is that if they are not codified into law, any subsequent president can just overturn that executive order. And Donald Trump has done just that with LBJ's 1965 anti-discrimination executive order. So it no longer exists, right? And one thing that I want you to burn into your brains is that Donald Trump revoked this and released a statement saying that Lyndon B. Johnson's executive order from 1965 was radical DEI preferencing. And part of that is because while it provided anti-discrimination protections for workers, a part of that executive order also required that employers who accept federal contract money take affirmative action not to discriminate against job applicants or workers, which is not, by the way, establishing, that affirmative action take place. You need affirmative action programs, but rather you need to make sure that you are not discriminating. That was the original intent here. And basically he's just saying, well, it says affirmative action in the order, so it must be radical DEI preferencing. And it's really insane. Right? It's just insane. So yeah, if you're a federal contractor, you are now, I guess, allowed to discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity. So that's great. Another really big one is this one: defending women from gender ideology, extremism, and restoring biological truth to the federal government. I'm not going to bore you with all the details on this, but essentially it's just trying to push trans people back in the closet. And a lot of it is just kind of hateful language. It's basically trying to say via executive order that, men are men and women are women and there's nothing in between and you can't change between them. You're just born one and that's it. Like that's basically it, right? And it also prohibits you using the wrong restroom in federal buildings, essentially. It also overturns certain passport things or identification documents, like being able to have X as your gender marker, or being able to change your gender marker on your passports. Um, yeah, it's a load of horseshit, essentially, and it's all deeply anti-science. There's nothing in this, by the way. I know Republicans want to crow about how this is just finally common sense science prevails, and it's like you guys don't know shit about science, though. You guys are talking about the science you learned that the science that is currently taught in like third grade like picture books. That's the kind of science you were taught in high school as cutting edge. It's now it's just in third grade books. And you know what? It turns out that in actual high school these days, you have more complicated understandings of what gender and sexuality mean. But, so Turner syndrome doesn't exist anymore. Like it's really easy to just say, "Oh, look at these dumb fucks." Well, part of the issue is that these dumb fucks have power now and are going to make the lives of, trans people living hell if they can. You know? Um didn't one of the orders define everyone as a woman because of the order in which chromosomes appear? I mean, you can argue that. It's clearly not the intent of the executive order, and let's be honest, they don't understand the science anyway. So like even if they don't understand the
I
science of
can't get
trans people.
LBJ out of my head whenever Lyndon Johnson is mentioned.
My name is LBJ. Um, Thank you for the 5 gifted subs, Sake Tanuki. You silly goose. So yes, the executive order is wrong-headed. It's anti-science. It is baby-brained, etc. But let's be clear, that's where the Republican Party is right now, and they're not going to go, "Oh, yeah, we didn't understand the science, so now everyone's a woman." Like, they're not going to do that, you know? They just don't give a shit. They don't care about actually comporting with what reality is. Now, this is the important part about this. Um, Trump's gender order won't affect existing passports unless they're renewed. So, guys, if you are trans and you have a passport, don't get it renewed. Okay? Don't do that. Just let it ride. You can get a new passport, hopefully after his term is over. All right? This is why for months prior to this, I've been encouraging you guys to get your passports or to get your enhanced identification that will allow you to pass through borders. Here in Minnesota, we have enhanced ID that allows you to cross the border with Canada and Mexico via land entries. So make sure you got something like that. His executive order also won't affect state level IDs. Okay? So if you are in a state that has these gender affirming legislation passed, get the state level IDs, that's fine. But maybe avoid renewing your passport or applying for a new one. Those are the reason you should avoid it, by the way, is because there is a decent chance that they will take down your information for some future fuckery. Okay? And on top of that, there have now been reports, again, through the trans grapevine that exists between all trans people, that different government offices are, suspending passport processes for trans folks. So tread carefully with all of that. Yeah. My passport is currently stuck in limbo, and I'm pretty upset about it. But that being said, it might also be a good idea to look into updating birth certificates, because that is a state-level activity. Though I wouldn't do so if you live in a red state where it is unsafe to get an updated birth certificate. Why can't they just leave us the fuck alone? Because then they'd actually have to deal with, the concerns of the working class materially. And they don't want to fucking do that. That would mean they wouldn't be able to pass their precious tax cuts. So, keep all that in mind, folks. Keep all of that in mind. Now, additionally, as far as things that are brewing that may come down the pipeline in the near future for LGBTQ Americans, I want you all to take note of this particular piece that appeared in Mother Jones, okay? Which is, first they tried to cure gayness, now they're fixated on healing trans people. So this is a really interesting piece. I'm going to link it in chat. It went up last year during the election. But basically, this is one of the platforms of, the Christian nationalists who are backing Trump. And essentially, there are...
an anti-trans...
Well, here, let's just take a quick look. We won't watch all of this because we got a lot to cover for this segment, but this is what is coming down the pipeline regarding trans people, in my opinion. So let's take a look.
Trans crusade has overtaken the United States. Sports bans, bathroom bans, healthcare bans, speech and education bans. And latching onto it is a movement that's been waiting in the shadows for a decade. Conversion therapists are back.
Okay, we don't need to know what is conversion therapy. We already know what it is. Basically, it is torturing gay and trans people in order to try and turn them straight and cis.
The role these therapists are playing in today's anti-trans politics, I started in Las Vegas, at a conference put on by an organization named the Alliance for Therapeutic Choice and Scientific Integrity.
By the way,
put on by an organization named the Alliance for Therapeutic Choice and Scientific Integrity.
Keep this organization's name in mind. I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to see it pop up in the next, month or two, possibly next 3 months.
I'd taken notice of the conference because the group putting it on has been active in the ex-gay movement since the 90s. And because of something else. Last year, I received a trove of leaked emails that illustrated how a network of anti-trans activists and powerful conservative Christian organizations were working closely with state lawmakers to draft and push anti-trans laws all across the country.
And they also work with these prominent conservative detransitioners. If you've ever seen parallels between the ex-gay movement and the detransitioners that get shuffled around the country to testify in state after state after state and get paid 6 figures to do it, there's a reason for that, and it's because the same organizations back both.
Some of the Alliance's people were included in those emails, and now they were getting together in Vegas for the first time in 4 years. Were they priming for a comeback? The presentations were illuminating, to say the least.
The real war that is raging is a religious war. The real war is up at the cultural level, the worldview level, secular, pagan, atheistic worldview. So we try to understand the abnormal thinking and come to help the person attain flourishing.
This talk's a little more focused on sexual orientation change efforts, but I think it's relevant as well to gender identity change efforts. Instead of calling it SOCI, we call it SciSOCI now, self-initiated sexual orientation change effort. Well, we're hopeful that that can be introduced into the literature and maybe gain some traction.
To be clear, the American
Yeah, see, look, it's not torture if someone's voluntarily doing it.
Psychological Association, the leading organization of over 150,000 psychology researchers, educators, and clinicians, has long maintained that conversion therapy, A, just doesn't work by any credible measures, and B, is associated with serious harm, including suicidality.
This fact has not gone unnoticed by professional organizations. More than a dozen of them in the United States alone have taken the time to create policy statements against gay conversion therapy.
APA has held an official position against conversion therapy.
These treatments are inaccurate, prejudicial, and have no basis for a positive outcome.
But that's not stopping these therapists. None of this is new. The Alliance was initially founded in the early 90s as the National...
Yeah, okay. We're going to skip some of this. If you guys are interested, this video is embedded in the article I shared in each of the chats. Basically, this is all just rebranded conversion therapy horseshit. I've had guests on the stream in the past who've talked about their experiences going through some of these camps. It is simply torture. They try and torture people. They abuse them for labor, and it can become very cult-like. Let's jump ahead here. Was there not a part 3? Was it just part 2?
So they rebranded into an organization that puts on conferences like the one I went to in Las Vegas. None of the people I met at the conference would call what they do conversion therapy per se. Instead, it's SAFETY, which stands for Sexual Attraction Fluidity Exploration and Therapy. Or it's reparative therapy, or even mindfulness.
Ugh, there we go.
The emails I got a hold of last year were a sneak peek into how the Alliance had their hands in today's renewed anti-LGBTQ movement. Copied on those emails were the Alliance's president-elect, a retired Alliance-affiliated counselor who acts as an advocate for the group, and Michelle Cretella.
So how can we, as physicians and counselors, begin to help gender dysphoric children embrace their bodies?
You see what I mean by it being like culty as hell? Like the music behind her and all that?
If we don't stand up, who will?
Those solutions be rooted in reality, and transgender ideology is not. This is child abuse.
All three of them have testified against gender-affirming care in state legislatures.
I'm here as a proxy for Dr. Michelle Cretella. The state of Rhode Island has no interest in protecting gender experts who are the equivalent of yesterday's expert lobotomists. And again, these are the words of Dr. Michelle Cretella.
Cretella was explicitly cited by a U.S. senator as a doctor opposing gender-affirming care as eugenics. And as this anti-trans legislation is being pushed to state lawmakers, Cretella and her colleagues are pushing to overturn bans on conversion therapy for minors.
This morning, controversial conversion therapy programs are allowed.
Repeal the ban on conversion therapy.
A bill to repeal the state's ban on conversion therapy for minors.
In Alabama, Florida, and Georgia, the federal 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled that banning conversion therapy violates the First Amendment.
Banning the torture of children violates the First Amendment. These people are jokes. These people are... The worst people are being empowered by the conservative movement. The same kind of people who want to bring back beating children in school want to bring back torturing kids until they're straight.
The appellate court found that law, which stops therapists from trying to change a child's sexual orientation or gender identity, violates the First Amendment.
A ban now declared unconstitutional, according to this 2-1 11th Circuit ruling.
And in Indiana, state politicians recently passed a law preventing local governments from outlawing this practice. Separately, Nebraska now mandates minors who are seeking medical care for gender dysphoria to undergo 40 hours of therapy that does not merely affirm their identity.
Teenagers and adults who have transgender belief can come to embrace their bodies, can heal.
It was the question of how to heal trans children that was a centerpiece of the Vegas conference. Clinicians I spoke to were adamant they could treat trans kids with a similar approach they used for gay people.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Look at these wonderful charts, by the way. Like, just
spoke to were adamant they
Can we just take a look? Significant increases in heterosexual attractions. Sexual attraction fluidity clinical results. Look at how scientific this fucking graph is, everybody. Look at it's going up. That's good. Line go up. Science.
They could treat trans kids with a similar approach they used for
significant decreases in homosexual attractions. Line goes down. Boo. These people literally think that the folks who watch and pay attention to them are fucking morons.
For gay people.
In our current culture, in which children are being indoctrinated with transgender belief from the moment they're out of the womb, they're being indoctrinated into gender confusion from preschool forward.
Yeah, it doesn't even have a number. It's literally just line go up, good. Line go down, good.
So no, with a gender confused child, the family absolutely needs our help.
The conference I went
to... It's a copy-pasted graph. Yeah, they're also lazy as hell. Like, they to make a living, they don't have to be compelling at what they do. They just have to do it, you know?
It was small, and at times the people speaking came off as almost silly. But it was also frightening. It confirmed for me how a political movement that sees transness as a problem includes people who believe conversion therapy is a solution. That's who's waiting in the shadows if anti-trans extremists get their way.
So yeah, Mother Jones doing some excellent reporting here. Again, I'm going to link it in chat. The title of the article is First They Tried to Cure Gayness, Now They're Fixated on Healing Trans People. And I'm pretty confident that this is what is currently coming down the pipeline following Trump's executive order relating to, trans people. So excellent reporting. The article goes far more in depth. It's really, really good. Okay. Like there's a reason we're not just like going through it piece by piece. It is significant, you know? So definitely check it out. Well worth your time to read. Just wanted to direct you guys to that piece of reporting. Excellent, excellent work. That being said, there is, I think we are able to see exactly how hollow the religious fervor around Donald Trump and evangelical nationalism, Christian nationalists. It's really hollow, if you've happened to like come across this breakdown of the first week of Donald Trump being in power, and you happen to be conservative, you happen to be a Christian nationalist, doesn't it bother you that there's not a whole lot of Christ in the Christian nationalist movement? Like, doesn't that bother you a little bit? Doesn't it bother you? And I know that the answer is probably no, because if it did, you wouldn't be a Christian nationalist. But one of the really interesting things that happened over the last several days is that in the process of Donald Trump becoming president, he, had to sit through a couple of religious ceremonies, religious speeches, right? And one of them was from basically this Episcopalian, I think Episcopalian, or maybe we'll just say a woman Christian, had the audacity to stand in front of Donald Trump and say, please have mercy on people. Essentially, have mercy on people who you perceive may have wronged you, And she's an Episcopalian bishop. I knew it. Okay, cool. Here's a picture of her, by the way. Seems like a nice lady. But basically entreated the incoming president to have mercy, to treat people with kindness, with love, compassion. And you know, maybe I can find the statement real quick. Da-da-da. Yeah, do we have the, yeah, you know what? Here we go.
Unity is relatively easy to pray for on occasions of great solemnity. It's a lot harder to realize when we're dealing with real differences in our private lives and in the public arena. But without unity, we're building our nation's house on sand. And with a commitment to unity that incorporates diversity and transcends disagreement, and with the solid foundations of dignity, honesty, and humility that such unity requires, we can do our part and in our time to realize the ideals and the dream of America.
Matthew Shepard is interred at her church? Okay, that's pretty base.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now. There are gay, lesbian, and transgender children in Democratic, Republican, and independent families, some who fear for their lives. And the people who pick our crops and clean our office buildings, who labor in poultry farms and meat packing plants, who wash the dishes after we eat in restaurants and work the night shifts in hospitals, they may not be citizens or have the proper documentation. But the vast majority of immigrants are not criminals. They pay taxes and are good neighbors. They are faithful members of our churches and mosques,
Tiffany looks so zooted.
synagogues, wadara, and temples. I ask you to have mercy, Mr. President, on those in our communities whose children fear that their parents will be taken away, and that you help those who are fleeing war zones and persecution in their own lands to find compassion and welcome here. Our God teaches us that we are to be
Everyone
merciful.
else can over the laws if they want to, but I came out and I'm not conforming ever. If suddenly being trans is a crime next Tuesday or something, then I guess I'm a criminal. I will disobey until my last breath.
Fuck yeah. We're all with you. And same here.
To the stranger. For we were all once strangers in this land. May God grant us the strength and courage to honor the dignity of every human being, to speak the truth to one another in love, and walk humbly with each other and our God for the good of all people, good of all people in this nation.
I am on
and the
Team
world.
Zooted.
G. Klein, thank you for the $5 super chat. And Queen Matriarch, thank you for the $20 super chat. I very, very much appreciate the support. But yeah, so that was the speech that she gave earlier this week. And let me tell you, that's been going over horribly in the conservosphere, okay? Donald Trump, furious. J.D. Vance, furious. Basically, every Christian nationalist hated that. They hate it. They are so goddamn angry. Okay? And it is really incredible.
Sup chat, I had food poisoning today, LFGGGGG.
Miss Milena, thank you for subscribing over on Twitch, and I'm very sorry to hear that you have food poisoning. I hope you feel better real soon. But you can tell how mad they are because they're literally getting on they're literally getting on like social media and saying, do not commit the sin of empathy. This snake is God's enemy and yours too. She hates God and his people. You need to properly hate in response. She is not merely deceived, but is a deceiver. Your eye shall not pity. Because she had the audacity to ask for mercy for the folks who are in fear in this country, and for mercy and understanding for the people who labor in this country without the recognition of citizenship. And they have the audacity to go out there and say she is committing the sin of understanding and feeling for other people. Now, look, I know a lot of people here, not a huge fan of God, right? I know a lot of people here, a lot of people, agnostic, atheist, pagan, non-Christian, in other words. I know some of you are Christian. And one thing you guys should know about me is that I used to teach at a Bible camp.
It would be nice if we could all send her nice cards and letters of support. I am wondering if there's a way to do that.
That would be really nice. I do not know her contact info, but that would be really, really nice. If someone figures out a way to do that, let's maybe organize that in the Discord. That'd be really kind. But if you guys don't know much about this whole Jesus thing, part of the whole point of Christianity was that God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. That's one of the whole things, right? That God loves the world, that he basically became a multifaceted entity and put part of himself, part of the Trinity on Earth in order that not only that he understand us, but that we understand him, right? Like, if you are a Christian, right? That's like the core part of your belief. That God came here so that we would know him. Right? And they're out here being like, oh yeah, fucking getting some fucking empathy. Guys, if you understood a single iota of your fucking religion, you would know that the entire premise of it is rooted in the empathy of God. That God loves the world to such an extent that he gives of himself in order to save it, in order to redeem it. Takes all that suffering and righteous punishment onto himself so that he can have relationship with us. You have to ignore literally the fundamental building blocks of the entire goddamn religion in order to arrive at the conclusions that they are. And I point this out because if you happen to be like some kind of Christian nationalist and you stumble across this video and you happen to watch this part, you won't, by the way, because none of you watch this far into my videos. But if on the off chance that you make it, you don't know any of this. You don't know your own religion.
I've decided I will unalive before I let anyone take my neighbors in the middle of the night.
And so, I point this out largely, and I know that a lot of you guys already know this, But a lot of conservatives don't really realize it. They don't really choose to reckon with the fact that their belief in this religion is entirely incidental, and the real thing that they've latched onto, the real thing that they believe in, is that they love the immediate people around them, and anyone outside of that category can go straight to fucking hell and burn there forever if it means that they can have $10 more in their wallet. Okay? That's it. That's straight up it. These people do not believe in the God that they profess to believe in, because they are cowards, and primarily underneath that cowardice is bigotry. That's all they got. They just back it up with whatever happens to be on hand. And by the way, there are people like that in all religions. There are people like that in all kinds of different religions. It's just in America, it seems to be very pressing that, you know, Christian nationalism tends to be one of the big ones where folks are like this. Also, just you can say death before detransition, all right? You don't gotta. Super Chat would not let me use the D word for not being. That's dumb. Super Chat. All right. Thank you for the $5 Super Chat failsafe. Also, One-Eyed Heathen, thank you for the $5 Super Chat. Understandable sentiments. God. Anyway, if you thought that rant was coming out of nowhere, I've got one more thing for you guys. Representative Josh Brechin has now introduced a resolution to fully condemn the distorted message that was preached at President Trump during the National Prayer Service on Monday. Trump's Christian nationalist pals trash Bishop who challenged Trump at prayer service. Yeah, basically they don't think she's a real Christian, and now they're trying to introduce legislation to condemn her for saying have
KK
mercy on the
conservatives
immigrant.
are too scared of Jack cause she states cold facts they can't handle.
It's true. And they're attracted to me, which makes them afraid for their sexualities. And you know what? It's too late. I've already got them. I've got all of your sexualities. Nothing you can do about it. But yeah. The Washington Insiders helping Sean Fucht spread Christian nationalism in Congress. Yeah. It's honestly, like, this is, in order to understand Republican politics, you really, really, really need to understand the Christian nationalist movement. On Representative Brechin, he was at the inaugural prayer service, seen speaking with conservative evangelical activist Sean Fucht. He also attended Fucht's 2023 worship service in Capitol Rotunda. He's an ally of Fucht, who espouses Christian nationalism, which is not at all surprising. Yeah. Today, I introduced a resolution to fully condemn the distorted message that was preached at President Trump during the National Prayer Service on Monday. Strongly urge my colleagues to act quickly on this resolution to show President Trump that the sermon given is not reflective of the faith community at large. Yeah, the faith community at large would never say something like, love thy neighbor and love the stranger. Or, you know, care for the downtrodden. You know, would never, you know, no self-respecting Christian would ever help a Samaritan on the highway. God, have you ever, disgusting Samaritans? Fucking disgusting. Always sitting on the side of the road, being poor and penniless and gross. You'd never help someone like them. I don't know, something like that, I'm sure. So, Yeah, that's a whole thing that's going on right now. Just Christian nationalism is really seeking to solidify its you know, zenith of power, we'll say. Can we at least get a real opposition party? Well, Geronimus Prime, that requires you actually getting involved in local politics. That requires us to do shit, actually. That's one of the things that I have been radicalized to, okay? That's one of the positions I have been radicalized to and that I've been trying to walk the walk on. And that is, if we want a better Democratic Party, we can no longer simply sit idly by and just wish that the Democratic Party were better. We actually have to get in there and make it better. You know, we can't just sit and be like, oh man, I wish my car wouldn't continually have an engine that explodes. No, we have to actually, like, we can't just sit there and wish for that. We have to fix the engine of the car. Otherwise, it's going to keep exploding. So, we got to show up to their goddamn meetings. And I know it's going to be boring as hell. I know it might be really difficult. But you know what? We are not powerless in this. We are not idle, you know, bystanders to this. We can actively participate and make it better. And that's what we need to do. If your local Dems are not radicalized, if your local Dems are feckless liberals, well, then you need to get in there and do something about it. You need to actually get involved in your local politics because you are the radical who can make it better. So, join your local Dems, but do more than that. Because you're right, the Democrats alone aren't going to save us. We need to join our local Dems and organize outside to pressure them both inside the party and outside the party. That's what we need to do. Join your local DSA, join your local anarcho-communists, join your local MLs, whatever, but also join your local Dems. Bring the fight both inside and outside. Pressure them from the outside, pressure them from the inside. Let's go. What we need is a takeover of the fecklessness of the Dems and turn it into a goddamn blade to be wielded against the establishment. And that relies on you guys getting involved. We can't just sit and wish like we have for like the last several years. And now's the time to get involved and build that power, build up that network, build up that organizing apparatus, because in 2 years, we're going to be at midterms. 1 year from now, we're going to be in the middle of midterm election season. I know that seems insane, right? 1 year from now is when we're kicking off the midterm election season. Let that sink in. It is not an eternity from now. It is 1 year from now. So start getting involved locally today. Build up power locally, and then, god damn it, let's try and build up power on a state level and on a national level. Okay? That's how we can make this better. That's how we fight this. At the very least, that's how we fight this before things get astronomically worse. Because if we don't fight this, if this is allowed to continue in our country, then pretty soon we're talking about a very different fight that we are not going to be at an advantage in, okay? So, let's win now, and not when things get astronomically worse. But we're not through yet. We're not through this whole Trump section yet. We're not even close, okay? What's one of the other big things that Donald Trump has announced this week? Well, he's announced basically one of the biggest AI scams in history. So Donald Trump wants to invest $500 billion into AI. Honestly, if I had to put a name on it here, let's get into this a little bit here, okay? The new entity, Stargate, will start building out projects needed for the further development of the fast-evolving AI in Texas, according to the White House. Joining Trump for the announcement fresh off his inauguration will be Masayoshi Son of SoftBank, Sam Altman of OpenAI, Larry Ellison of Oracle, and let's see here. One of the things I've been, let's see. Yeah, last October, the financial company Blackstone estimated the U.S. would see $1 trillion invested in data centers over 5 years, with another $1 trillion being committed internationally. Those estimates for investment suggest that much of the new capital will go through Stargate, as OpenAI has established itself as a sector leader with the 2022 launch of ChatGPT. Yeah. And what's really interesting here is that we've announced this $500 billion partnership. $500 billion, right? What is it supposed to do? You know, like, what is it supposed to fucking do, guys? Notice how, like, he announced this, right? Like, half a $1 trillion invested into AI. To do what? Usually, if you're investing in something, you make something, right? Like, if you put a ton of money into, like, I don't know, building an aircraft carrier, you expect at the end of it to have an aircraft carrier, right? What is this AI going to do? Generate CO2? Use up all of the oil, of course. But, like, what I find fascinating is people are just like, oh yes, this is a brilliant play, sir. One wonderful play to invest in AI. But, like, I find it very interesting that they don't say what it's gonna do. And in my mind, right? In my mind, it seems to me like you would want this for, I don't know, surveillance, for example. Like, that's why you would make it. I've been saying for a while, venture capitalists don't have new things to invest in. We're at the token threshold. Yeah, I mean, like, what is it going to be used for? Are we, like, if you can't tell me what materially this thing can do to improve our lives, my basic assumption is either that it's for ghoulish shit that they don't want to tell you what it's for, or number two, and this is the far more likely one, there is no real purpose to it other than as a scam. Like, this is, in my opinion, a colossal scam. This is a way for all of these tech billionaires to get in unimaginably wealthy and then cash out. They're going to cash out and leave the US government holding the bag. That's my interpretation of it. Okay? Because I don't know that these data centers and this level of AI is going to be able to do anything other than money launder. Like, I don't know, like, what are you going to use it for? Like, they've put AI in all of the technology that is coming out recently, and it doesn't do anything to improve my experience with the devices. They're putting AI into all the software. It actively makes me angry. And I do not see how our tax dollars going into this are going to make that any better. And I think that's because it's not going to. I think it's just a massive rug pull. Nutmeg Riot, that's exactly what I think. It sounds like The Big Short on steroids. Exactly. Exactly. So that's another thing. And in other news regarding wild money laundering...
What do you mean do? This AI is an idol, their golden calf that exists just to be worshipped.
Zafra Fennec, thank you for the $10 super chat. Well, yeah, it really is... It's their golden goose. And I think their golden goose is getting to the end of its lifespan, frankly. Now, in other news, when it comes to what Trump has been doing, this piece in Semaphore really piqued my interest here. Trump sets $1 trillion target for Saudi Arabia ties. Now, guys, I don't know if you guys are aware of Donald Trump's ties to Saudi Arabia. But, you know, after his presidency, his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, inexplicably got billions of dollars funneled into his startup venture capital firm from the Saudi royal family. And in fact, it was such a bad investment that accountants for the Saudi royal family were on record saying, there's really no history for Jared Kushner's investment company. This is a bad investment for, you know, the Saudi Royal Wealth Fund. We shouldn't do this. But they were overruled with no explanation given, which is very interesting, right? And I'll just remind you guys that during Donald Trump's presidency, if I'm remembering correctly here, the Saudi royal prince ordered Jamal Khashoggi dismembered in a hotel. Well, Donald Trump earlier this week gave a speech at Davos, which is basically a gathering of enormously wealthy people from across the planet. And in that, at that event, he called the crown prince of Saudi Arabia, the guy who ordered the dismemberment of an American resident, a fantastic guy. Now, I don't know about you guys, but usually I do not refer to folks who order journalists dismembered as fantastic guys. You know?
This super chat was sent by Blargan, your friendly neighborhood ChatGPT chatbot. Bleep bloop.
Bleep bloop indeed, Blargon. Bleep bloop indeed. Thank you for your compelling addition to the conversation. See what AI adds? Thank you. So, basically, yeah. This week began with U.S. President Donald Trump placing a $500 billion price tag on making his first foreign visit to Riyadh. Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman pledged to boost investments and trade with the U.S. to $600 billion during Trump's presidency, while Saudi Arabia's finance minister revealed the kingdom already holds over $770 billion in American investments. So basically, what we're seeing here is, look, we want you to invest $1 trillion into America, not this $700 billion shit. Now, I don't know about you guys, but if I'm Donald Trump, a guy who only cares about enriching himself, and in the past, the Saudi royal family has put $2 billion into my son-in-law's investment firm, when I take the stage and say to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, I want you to invest $1 trillion into America.
There is a PBS news show called Frontline. They have an episode about how much American politicians and business people are tied in with the Saudis.
Yes, and you should all watch that episode. It's very, very good. But if I'm the president and I'm like, I want $1 trillion more invested into America, where do you think the Saudi royal family that has previously put $2 billion into a Trump family company is going to put some of that money? Can anyone take a wild stab at which American companies are going to be the beneficiaries of a lot of this Saudi money? Because I could take a couple wild stabs. Did you take a wild Because I'm going to guess it's Trump companies. American Trump companies. It's basically, he went to Davos and asked for a payoff. And he's going to get it. Does that mean now they're going to put $100 billion into Trump companies? No. But are they going to put $5 billion in? $10 billion? Now we're talking, I think, a realistic number, because in the grand scheme of $1 trillion, what is 10 billion? You know? Worth thinking about. One of the other things to think about is that
I propose we use Greenlands to describe this administration's money dealings, a Greenland being $1.2 billion that they need to have a fully fledged treasury.
Shamaniacal the Shamanite, thank you for the $5 super chat. And One-Eyed Heathen, thank you also for the $5 super chat. Basically, he's asking for a payoff here. But also, and this is an interesting part at the very end of this, Trump is also seeking Saudi cooperation on broader goals, including the normalization of ties with Israel that would further deepen security links between Washington and Riyadh. Which, guys, he's going to continue to try and normalize relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which is not a surprise, but I think you all realize what this means, right? It effectively means that, like, you're giving Israel the green light to continue its annexation efforts in the West Bank and in Gaza. This ceasefire is not going to last. It's very clear what the dynamic is between the United States and Saudi Arabia under Trump. And it does not prioritize any kind of ceasefire between Netanyahu and Hamas. Or, you know, the Palestinian Authority, for that matter. So, yeah, bad news going on there. But let's continue on, because we obviously haven't talked about one of the biggest issues yet, which is birthright citizenship. So one of the major executive orders that Donald Trump signed was the birthright citizenship executive order, essentially trying to argue that undocumented immigrants who have children here are not giving birth to U.S. citizens, which flies directly in the face of the 14th Amendment. And one of the things we have to talk about and really reckon with here is that when we're talking about birthright citizenship, it starts to open a lot of really uncomfortable doors the second you try and challenge the 14th Amendment, which is precisely, by the way, why the 14th Amendment has consistently been upheld in court, famously under Wong Kim Ark, the Wong Kim Ark decision. And we are really on the precipice of some truly bad shit if the courts decide to, kick this all the way up to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court overturns all this precedent. Okay? I found this really great overview from this site, Balls and Strikes. We're going to go over it. The legal case for Trump's birthright citizenship executive order is vapid and embarrassing. So, just to, does their decision matter? Yes, the Supreme Court's decision on this is going to matter a lot. Okay? Additionally, it does remain to be seen whether or not this will even make it all the way through the court system during his term. This is a very, very long fight. It has already been smacked down in court once. But I really want to emphasize that I want to see so much more time being taken. I want to see every single judge that is deliberating on this make it take as long as humanly possible. I want them to run out the clock, really just wait it out until the last day that they are required to rule and then smack it down again. That's what we need. But let's take a look here. What makes this so bad? So, a coalition of 22 Democratic-led states promptly filed multiple lawsuits calling the order a flagrantly unlawful attempt to strip hundreds of thousands of American-born children of their citizenship. But the attack on birthright citizenship did not come out of thin air. It is a product of years, even decades of hard work from far-right academics and activist judges who've been preparing for this moment, one incoherent law review article at a time. Long though this shot may still be, now that a Republican president is willing to make the case to a Republican Supreme Court supermajority with little demonstrated interest in telling the Republican president no, the conservative legal movement is finally taking the opportunity. Okay? On Thursday, the Justice Department tried for the first time to persuade a judge that this racist stunt passes legal muster, and that the paper on which it is printed should not immediately be shredded to insulate the drafty attics of flipped houses with no chance of passing inspection. This did not go well for the Trump administration. The substantive section of its brief, which again argues that Trump alone has the unilateral authority to dispense with a century of unbroken precedent, spans only 3 pages, and as a legal argument, I would characterize it as ambitious in the same way that Shackleton trying to cross Antarctica in the winter of 1915 was ambitious, which doomed from the start, to say the least. Already, the judge in one of the challenges has blocked Trump's order from taking effect, but only after more or less urging the Justice Department lawyers in his courtroom to resign, retire, and move to a cabin in the woods to live out their days in shame. Quote, I've been on the bench for over 4 decades, and I can't remember another case where the question presented is as clear as this, said Judge John Cohenhauer, a Reagan appointee to a Washington state trial court. Quote, frankly, I have difficulty understanding how a member of the bar would state unequivocally, there we go, that this is a constitutional order. It just boggles my mind. So, let's see here. The leading Supreme Court case here is the United States v. Wong Kim Ark, which in 1898 affirmed that the children born to parents who live in the United States are indeed United States citizens, their parents' citizenship notwithstanding. Quote, the amendment, in clear words and in manifest intent, includes the children born within the territory of the United States of all other persons or of whatever race or color domiciled within the United States, wrote Justice Horace Gray for the majority. To conclude otherwise, he continued, would deny citizenship to thousands of persons of English, Scottish, Irish, German, or other European parentage who have always been considered and treated as citizens. And there is literally no example here of any court ever siding against Wong Kim Ark. It is that it's like that decisive of like a Supreme Court ruling, right? And in an attempt to try and like overcome this decisive ruling, the Trump administration's lawyers have had to get a little creative, which is being generous here, okay?
Part of resisting is not letting the American public hold double standards. If they're willing to elect a bully, we need our own bully. Someone from our side needs to get aggressive about leftism.
True, the Queen Matriarch. And maybe a better way of putting it wouldn't be that I don't know that we need our own bully. We need people who are willing to use power. And I think there's a difference between the two. I don't think we need a loudmouth. I don't think we need like someone who is like disgusting and awful and like I think we need someone who's unafraid to actually wield power, you know? We need for example, I don't think of Bernie Sanders as a bully, but I do think if Bernie Sanders were in a position to wield national level power, he would. And that's the kind of person we need, you know? We need people with actual goddamn conviction. We need people who have the will to actually do something. You know? Okay. So to try and get around this precedent, Trump's lawyers have tried two different things, right? So I'm going to go back to this article. First, they refer to the writings of two Supreme Court justices, Joseph Story and Samuel Miller, for the proposition that the children of undocumented people are subject to foreign powers and thus not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Which, okay, I'm just going to pause. If you are arguing that foreign nationals are not subject to the laws of the United States while they're here, that is an interesting take for a country that wants to deport foreign nationals. You know, like that's very bizarre to try and argue that simultaneously, you know, they are subject to our laws, but they are not subject to them at the same time, you know? So I think we can kind of see already that that's a bit self-defeating for their point. But to quote this, in the 1834 treatise, Commentaries on the Conflict of Laws, Joseph Story argues that the birthright citizenship rule should not apply to the children of parents who are in itinere in the country, or who were abiding there for temporary purposes as for health or occasional business. 5 decades later, in his 1891 treatise, Lectures on Constitutional Law, Samuel Miller, opined that if a foreign visitor has a child here which goes out of the country with its father, that child is not a citizen of the United States because it was not subject to its jurisdiction. Which, neither of those are court precedent. They're just something that these people thought about and wrote down in books prior to the Supreme Court case. That's like saying, what Clarence Thomas said about the pube on a Coke can is Supreme Court, like should be binding on a national level, you know? What Clarence Thomas said to not Anita Bryant, damn it, I can't remember her name. Fuck. The bit is dead. Moving on. You understand what I mean. It's like saying like an offhanded comment from a justice when they aren't actually like opining on a case or writing a decision should then be binding for the Supreme Court for eternity. Anita Hill, thank you. I've had Anita Bryant on the brain today, so sorry guys. Anita Hill. There we go. Let's see here. So, yeah, basically none of what the Trump administration is arguing is at all backed up by precedent in the courts. So if the Supreme Court does wind up siding with Trump on this one, it is entirely without precedent in US law, and we should fight it by whatever means available to us. Now, one other thing that deserves mention while we're talking about the birthright citizenship debacle that is going to slowly move its way through the courts is this, and this is coming courtesy of local news in Arizona. Reports of Navajo people being detained in immigration sweeps sparks concern from tribal leaders. This following the DOJ arguing in court that indigenous people don't have birthright citizenship under the 14th Amendment, so neither should children of non-citizens born in the US. Basically, one of the things that Trump's lawyers have argued in court up to this point is that indigenous folks, members of tribes, or those born on reservations are not entitled to US citizenship. Now, to what extent that is an insane legal gambit that they are trying in order to seem like they have more merit to their case, or if it is an actual foreshadowing of a maneuver that they are in the works already, remains to be seen. But yeah, it is really worrisome because up until I came across this article, I hadn't really considered that, you know? And one of the things that this made me far more worried about now is the possibility of some of the other things Trump has said, right? Which is, he has promised to expand America's territory, right? That's one of the things he has as a goal for, his administration, is territorial expansion. Which is, I'm worried that may be one of the goals here, is to seize lands from the tribes. That is a possibility I had not considered, and would absolutely be something that I could see Donald Trump looking into and pursuing.
Did you see the conversation of Rock with Jon Stewart? Very encouraging.
I did not see that conversation, but I am planning on seeing it, on watching it. Dude, his favorite president is Andrew Jackson, the guy who did the Trail of Tears. It would not surprise me if this guy went after native lands. Okay? One of the very first things he did was rename the mountain in Alaska. He wanted to take away its ancestral name and change it to Denali. Yes. He wanted to change Mount Denali's name, and its ancestral name is Denali, to Mount McKinley. A president who never had anything to do with the mountain whatsoever. So, yeah. Dude does not care about indigenous rights, indigenous lands, and I can very, very, very easily see him looking at native lands and seeing it as a potentially easy thing for him to seize. Yeah, in his initial speech, he did talk about Manifest Destiny and talk about, seizing control of the natural resources of the country. So, yeah, it's all of that deeply worrying, for sure. For sure, for sure. God. It's so worrisome, guys.
Mass deportations, check. Wanting to conquer land, check. Xenophobia pause, check. First victims, immigrants and trans people? Check. How is MAGA not a Nazi crap show, again?
Oh! They are. We're getting to that. But yeah, one of the things I really wanted to talk about before I closed all of my tabs by accident, fixing that right now. Come on. My internet is very angry with me. There we go. Okay. Media Breakdown, thank you for the $5 super chat. And yes, Alaska, yeah, it was a nice gesture when Obama reaffirmed that the mountain name was Denali. Yeah. And the Queen Matriarch, thank you for the $10 super chat. I really appreciate it. And guys, YouTube chat, you guys are killing it today. Riverboat chat, you guys got to step up your game, okay? You guys got to, you guys got to, like, step it up. Or even step it up 2. Or even maybe step it up 3. I think there are like 6 movies. There's a lot of stepping up to do. But to stay on the topic of indigenous folks for a second, this article brought up that possibility of land seizures, right? But one of the things, let's just work through this article from Arizona, okay? Courtesy of the Arizona Mirror. As U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement intensifies its efforts to apprehend and deport undocumented immigrants throughout the country, concern is rising among indigenous communities residing in urban areas about reports of indigenous people being detained in the valley. Since President Donald Trump issued his executive order for an increase in ICE raids, Navajo tribal leaders have received alarming reports that their tribal members are being detained, heightening uncertainties over the implications these actions have for their communities and the safety of their people. Quote, "We now know that Navajo people and enrolled members of other tribes are being detained in Phoenix and other cities by ICE." Navajo Nation Council Speaker Crystalline Curley said during a committee meeting on Thursday. "The reports that we have received indicate that we need to coordinate an operation or some type of response to help our enrolled tribal members here on the Navajo Nation." So, on Thursday, Navajo tribal leaders reported that they have received calls and text messages from Navajo people living in urban areas who've been stopped, questioned, or detained by ICE. Those reports sparked outrage among Navajo Nation Council members and prompted a detailed discussion of the topic during a, oh man, I'm going to butcher this and I apologize, Nabikiyate committee meeting. These raids have sparked significant fear, especially among tribal members in urban areas who face challenges with documentation. The Navajo Nation Council said in a press release. A verified number of the Navajo people who've been detained was not shared during the committee meeting. Yeah. State Senator Theresa Hatathley reported to the council that she received a call about a case involving 8 Navajo citizens who were detained for hours with no cell phones or ability to contact their families or tribes. She did not share the individual's identity. Yeah. Quote, "Despite possessing certificates of Indian blood," which is, let's just pause here. It is wild that is a thing that exists. "And state-issued IDs, several individuals have been detained or questioned by ICE agents who do not recognize these documents as valid proof of citizenship." Yeah. So literally they're asking indigenous people for their papers and then not believing them and just arresting them. And that is then reflected in the Trump administration's legal case to get rid of birthright citizenship.
I got bored one day and put everything on a bagel.
Salmon Moose, thank you for the 5 gifted tier 1 subs. I very, very much appreciate that. Our people are afraid to travel, speak out, or interact with law enforcement due to the threat of retaliation. This fear must be addressed with systemic solutions. And basically, Navajo Nation Deputy Attorney General Chris Beecher said during the committee meeting that tribal leaders should encourage their constituents to be respectful during interactions with law enforcement and that they should carry their state and tribal IDs at all times. Okay, but where do you deport tribal people? Well, one, this is in Arizona. So if you had to pick a place where you're going to deport someone in Arizona that you don't think looks white enough, where do you think they're going to get deported to? Regardless of their country of origin. They're going to put them in a holding camp and either keep them there indefinitely or deport them to Mexico. You know? It really is not great. And basically, a lot of this article is just... It's not even like indigenous people who have been arrested by ICE who are saying this. It's like the leadership of the Navajo Nation, like leader after leader basically coming out and saying, yeah, it's really scary out there. You know?
I failed a drug test. I explained to my work, I had a beagle, they said, that explains the puppies, but what about the other drugs? I said, it wasn't everything beagle. I'll be here all night.
One-Eyed Heathen, thank you for the $10 super chat. Oh, God. Yeah, the next part of this article focuses on how the indigenous community in Arizona has been here before. I'll just quote a little bit of this. April Ignacio, co-founder of the Indivisible Tohono, grew up and lives on the Tohono O'odham Nation, whose tribal lands are on both sides of the Arizona-Mexico border. We still have our traditional villages in Mexico, Ignacio said, adding that the U.S. Border Patrol and Customs has had a presence within their tribal community for decades. We've been here before. This isn't something new, she said of the increased immigration actions being implemented by the Trump administration. We have tribal members that still have their rights violated, if not daily, and there is no way to hold them accountable to that. However, Ignacio said she understands how there are people who go through their entire lives without being approached by an ICE officer or the Border Patrol, especially among indigenous people. Yeah. Basically, they're... yeah. Skipping ahead a little bit. Being Native in this country is political, Ignacio said. And now that these policies are touching more tribes, she said there's a lot more pushback, something that will benefit all tribes. Ignacio said the Trump administration's new policies are taking aim at tribal communities in new and shocking ways, which will draw attention to them and spur tribal responses. For example, the Trump administration openly questioned the U.S. citizenship of indigenous peoples as part of its defense of Trump's executive order to suspend birthright citizenship in the U.S. Trump signed the executive order shortly after he was sworn into office this week. It would end birthright citizenship for babies born to a mother and father who are not U.S. citizens or lawful permanent residents. Yeah. I'm going to quote the DOJ filing here. The United States' connection with the children of illegal aliens and temporary visitors is weaker than its connection with members of Indian tribes, the DOJ argued in a filing. If the latter link is insufficient for birthright citizenship, the former certainly is, the Trump administration argued. The DOJ cited the 1884 U.S. Supreme Court case Elk versus Wilkins, in which the High Court decided that because members of Indian tribes owe immediate allegiance to their tribes, they are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and are not constitutionally entitled to citizenship. And of course, very conveniently, the DOJ ignored the Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, explicitly giving Native Americans and indigenous people birthright citizenship, which I believe people in chat were pointing out earlier. But the fact that they are ignoring that is deeply troubling, you know? Yeah, and the end of this article, I'm going to link it in chat, by the way. I encourage you all to read it fully. But the end of this is a quote from Ignacio that says, "No matter which way you slice or dice it, the way it is going to touch tribes is in how it affects their sovereignty." Which, to me, that's worrisome, you know? Because I think fundamentally, one of the interests that the Trump administration has in advancing that argument is that if these people are not U.S. citizens, then you can take their land. You know, why are they like that? It is feigned ignorance, Lisa Bay. It's feigned ignorance. If you feign the ignorance and you get enough people to go along with you, you can be like, oh, well, they're not citizens, so we can just invade their territory. It's you know, a conquest. We're just fulfilling manifest destiny. And you know what? A lot of conservatives really like that idea. It is creating a pretense with which to, you know, subsume tribal lands. And some of the stuff on that land, well, you could put pipelines through there. Or it has oil under it. Or it has uranium. Or it has lithium. Or, you know, like, there's a lot of corporate interest in those lands for exploitation. And it is, in my mind, it is a disgustingly obvious display of greed for the natural resources in that land and the logistical, you know, importance of that land for various projects like oil. So, yeah. This is another component of a very worrying first week. Okay? And okay, I'm gonna do something that I'm just gonna play my hand here. This makes me mad. Like, this entire story makes me, like, furious beyond all reason. But, like, each element of this is just bad in new and infuriating ways. That last story was bad in, like, my heart is, like, on fire, thirsting for justice for Indigenous people, you know? This next part makes me mad in an entirely new way, and I will admit, a far more petty way. And that is, of course, Michael Bloomberg is back, everyone. And not only is Michael Bloomberg back, the Trump administration is so fucking evil that they're making Michael Bloomberg look like a good guy. Okay? Do you know how bad things have to be for Michael Bloomberg to look like the good guy? Do you know how bad it has to be? Monty Records, I'm glad you like watching my vids. So basically, guys, Donald Trump pulled us out of a lot of climate change commitments, okay? He's fucked up everything, okay? Like, Trump is withdrawn from the Paris Climate Accords, and basically Michael Bloomberg is stepping in with his philanthropic arm to fully fund the UN climate body, okay? To make up for the lack of funds from the United States. And I have to be honest here, guys. The United States was responsible for over 20% of the UN's leading climate body. It was responsible for 21% of its budget. Okay? And Michael Bloomberg is going to step in and cover that. So that's really good. You know, that's it's literally the bare minimum. So he's stepping in to provide around like $10 million to fund that. Last year he contributed $4.5 million. And I believe, yeah, the UNFCCC's main budget lines total 240 million euros for 2024 to 2025. So there, it remains to be seen how much Bloomberg Philanthropies is going to actually donate. But if it is actually going to step up and provide for the 2024-2025 budget, like that's going to be that's going to be a significant amount of money, and it's good that that is coming from somewhere. It's just baffling to me how the Trump administration can make Michael Bloomberg look like a good guy. How bad do we have to be for Bloomberg to be the hero? You know, 1 second to midnight? Really? Now we have to talk about another part of this. Okay. Real quick. A lot of people have been posting this image today of U.S. egg prices going skyrocketing after, you know, people being like, oh, the egg prices are so high under Joe Biden. Joe Biden made the egg prices high. And a lot of people are basically being like, the folks obsessively posting about egg prices for the past few years have gone strangely quiet just as egg prices hit an all-time high. And it's like, I don't want to call this guy out in particular, okay? I have nothing against this individual poster, but it's like, the problem is so much bigger than something we can just be smug about. You know, like it's the bird flu, everybody. It's the chickens are dying. Okay, there's a mass, Black Death level event for chickens happening across the United States. And it is really bad. And it's going to get so much worse. Guys, this outbreak has killed 136 million birds so far. That's so fucking many birds. Okay? 136 million birds. 30 million of which have been killed to try and stop it. But it's spreading amongst wild birds, and so it's hopping from bird haven to bird haven. Okay? And 10% of the egg-laying population has been culled. So many birds! And we have cases where it is leaping from birds into cattle, and from cattle into people. Now, the big thing is, we are very lucky that it is not very good yet at leaping from person to person. But if somebody infected with bird flu also gets the normal yearly flu, there is a decent chance that those two viruses can swap parts. It is a common occurrence, okay? If they swap the right parts, it will then gain the ability to transmit between humans. And that is basically going to put us in Pandemic 2 Electric Boogaloo. Okay? Now, you might say, well, we went through one pandemic. Guess we can live through another one. Yeah, about that. Trump halts government agency communication, making bird flu even more precarious. Amid ongoing outbreaks, the flow of vital information between public health organizations ceases. Since President Donald J. Trump's inauguration on Monday, public health officials have found themselves at a confusing and potentially dangerous standstill. On a global scale, the newly elected president has pulled the U.S. out of the World Health Organization and now paused external communications for a number of government agencies. The move comes at a critical time for public health as human cases of bird flu have slowly increased, resulting in one death earlier this month, and a number of former public health officials have said the government is not testing enough for bird flu. The sudden freeze means agencies like the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, are unable to release communications such as scientific reports and health updates. Of particular concern, the pause has no concrete end date, which has left agency employees confused on its scope, according to the Washington Post. So basically, we actually have no idea how bad it is right now. So you might say, oh, you said we killed 136 million birds have died. That's old data. We have no idea. The government agencies that are, in charge of keeping us safe in the case of a pandemic are not allowed to communicate with each other now and not allowed to release their findings publicly. And our country is no longer participating in the international project of the WHO. So we have no idea how bad it is or how bad it could be. Okay? Why not? Because of Trump's executive orders. Because of the marching orders handed down by the president. What do they gain from this? Just less testing equals less cases? Yes. It is literally that again. That's how this man thinks, guys. Yeah. How will the pause affect public health warnings? It appears the freeze is already delaying CDC publications such as their main weekly report that provides the public with timely health advice and research. This week's iteration, scheduled for earlier this week, has not yet been published and was supposed to include new studies and data on the ongoing H5N1 avian influenza virus outbreak. This is not the first time these CDC reports have been affected by the Trump administration. In 2020, officials at the HHS tried to change, delay, and prevent such reports, particularly those related to COVID-19. It's literally the same thing again. Okay? There is also ambiguity as to the breadth of the communications covered, according to the Center for Science in the Public Interest statement, which could hinder agency coordination during an outbreak of foodborne illness. A spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services tells Sentient that a pause on communications and public appearances are not directly related to emergencies or critical to preserving health. They also said this is a short pause to allow the new team to set up a process for review and prioritization. There are exceptions for announcements that HHS divisions believe are mission critical, but they will be made on a case-by-case basis. And a representative from the CDC declined to comment. And of course, halting agency coordination could exacerbate bird flu outbreaks, which I feel like is pretty self-explanatory here. Yeah. Oh, yeah, just one last thing, because everything is stupid. At present, the current strain of avian flu cannot spread human to human, but this may change if the virus mutates, which is why epidemiologists rely on accurate data from agencies like the CDC to track the spread. Another cause for concern is raw milk, which has been found to contain the virus, but so far has only infected animals who consumed it. Now, you might say, that's an odd sentence to throw in there. That's because the Trump administration wants to legalize raw fucking milk, which is unpasteurized milk. Pasteurization is the process of heating up the milk until it kills the bacteria and viruses in it, but not enough to, like, ruin the milk.
Stay safe, drink water, build coalition, attend a DSA or PDA meeting. Check out the Discord. Cheers, folks.
Thistles Fries, thank you for the $5 super chat. And yes, check out the Discord, riverboat.gg/Discord. But yes, as Jay in chat has pointed out, humans are in fact animals. And if you're a human and you are the Trump administration, well, a lot of Trump administration officials want to legalize raw milk. And guess what? If you drink infected raw milk, you could get this. Because it's infected milk. God damn it. We live in the dumbest fucking timeline. Like, guys, you know how you know how bad it has to be when a scientific journal that's literally called Science writes about this? Do you know how bad it has to be? They literally wrote an editorial titled "A World Less Safe and Secure" due to what Donald Trump is doing by pulling the United States out of the WHO, the World Health Organization. It is that bad. Literal science is telling you so. But that, of course, is not all. Donald Trump pardoned 1,500 rioters who participated in the attempt to overthrow the U.S. government on January 6th, 2021. And that includes, by the way, members of the Oath Keepers a violent militia group. And, maybe one silver lining here is that members of the Oath Keepers are restricted from visiting Washington, D.C. So that's good, I guess. U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta's order affects 8 defendants: Stuart Rhodes, Kelly Meggs, Kenneth Harrelson, Jessica Watkins, Roberto Minuta, Edward Vallejo, David Marshall, and Joseph Hackett. And let's see here. Yeah, this comes after Stuart Rhodes met with GOP lawmakers at the Capitol complex on Wednesday. And, we'll see if that restriction holds up even after being commuted by the president. Forgive me for getting mad, but why do we deserve this? Why should we live in an Ancapistan hell? Because we need to do better and we need to win. That's why. We didn't do good enough. Because we got complacent and we waited for the Democrats to save us, and they failed us. Every person of competence in our system absolutely and utterly failed. That's why. So it falls to us to try and dig ourselves out of the pit by hook or by crook, and we must do that. It's not going to be fun. It's going to require a lot of work, but hopefully this level of suffering radicalizes you to take action, to build political power, and to, frankly, retake it at the local, state, and national level. We lost because people who are currently in power failed us. And so it falls to us to take them out of power and put in people who will be radical, who will wield power, and who will stand with the working class. Okay? Fundamentally, that's it. But yeah, those members of the Oath Keepers will now need permission to enter Washington, D.C., following that stunt where they met with lawmakers on Wednesday. So, at the very least, that's something. Just curious, what chat do you read more? I read all chats equally. But I do pay special attention to the folks who come over to riverboat.gg because they are cuties. Cutie patooties. Okay. Now, one of the things that we probably all should have seen coming here, and that is an expansion of what we'll just call the bounty programs. Now, you all may recall that, back during the first Trump administration, Republican states started creating bounty programs, specifically for women seeking abortions. Like, you could turn in someone who went out of state to seek an abortion, or who got an abortion in state. You guys remember that, right? That is expanding, okay? We've got Mississippi over here doing the same, but for undocumented immigrants. So, yeah, Mississippi lawmakers have filed a bill to basically create a bounty hunting system for undocumented immigrants. If passed by both chambers and signed by Republican Governor Tate Reeves, it would allow bail bond and surety recovery agents to find and detain undocumented immigrants. Those detained would be charged with trespass by an illegal alien, a felony with severe penalties. For every undocumented immigrant turned over to the Mississippi Department of Safety and subsequently deported, $1,000 in bounties will be given. This program is about keeping Mississippi communities safe, Keene said. Gotta say, you know, if you were to say what you associate with safety, bounty hunting programs would not be one of them. You know, I don't particularly think of bounty hunters and think, ah, yes, they're safe to be around. Oh, yes, these people who hunt human beings for a living. Yeah, they're safe. I want them in my community. No. Yeah, surely there won't be mistaken identities. Surely it won't just be racist fuckwads arresting people they hear speaking Spanish. God. Yes, Polyez's Cracker. We're not talking ICE would be paid $1,000 per immigrant. We're talking literal dipshits. Like Dog the Bounty Hunter being paid $1,000 per immigrant. It's really, really disgusting. This is all a lot? Yep, it is. It definitely is. Now, another thing that is going through, Trump wants to label drug cartels terrorist organizations. NPR did a good explainer here. What would a terrorist designation do? The US government already has tools, including criminal charges and sanctions that it can use to go after cartels. A terrorist designation would broaden those options. The most significant additional tool, experts say, would be the ability to bring what are known as material support prosecutions. Under US law, it is a crime to provide material support to a designated terrorist organization. Material support can run from money to weapons to lodging, false papers, or even a phone card. In the context of drug cartels, prosecutors could potentially use this charge against a whole range of actors, including cartel members, the street gangs in the US that sell narcotics, as well as anyone who provides financial or logistical support. The ripple effects, though, could be bigger. Some analysts note that US companies that do business in Mexico routinely make payments to Mexican companies, some of which could be controlled or affiliated with a cartel or cartel members. That could possibly expose those American firms to penalties. Migrants could also potentially be swept up in material support prosecutions. Experts say migrants often pay smugglers to get through Mexico or across the US-Mexico border. And those smugglers often have ties to cartels, and that could provide grounds for American authorities to keep those migrants out of the US. Or, and I'm just spitting this out there, could serve as grounds to hold them here indefinitely. Because if you're prosecuting them here, you're not deporting them, right? If you're prosecuting and sentencing them here for a crime, like aiding and abetting a terrorist organization, that means you could just arrest them, right? Which in turn would mean that you can put them in a, I don't know, minimum security prison that rents out its labor to different businesses, you know? Guys, what I'm seeing here is effectively what I would consider a large-scale effort to clamp down on immigration, but also to criminalize undocumented immigrants in such a way that allows you to basically turn them into slave labor. Yeah, the Kitsune Cavalier, that's kind of what I'm thinking. If you set up these prison camps in predominantly rural areas, well, guess what? You suddenly have your workforce for the fields, don't you? You just make them private prisons for minimum security, non-violent offenders that have been charged as terrorists and so are kept for prolonged periods of time. And then you rent them out to the fields surrounding the prison. Now, I don't know that that is exactly what they're going to do, but that seems exactly like what they're going to do. That seems like if I were an evil person in bed with private prison corporations like Donald Trump is, and in bed with big business, that's something that would come up. And of course, one additional thing. There have been questions about whether a terrorism designation opens the door to possible unilateral military action by the United States on Mexican territory. The U.S. president already has the authority to conduct military action. A designation wouldn't change that, but American military strikes inside Mexico would be a major step, and Mexico has made it clear it opposes any such action, which, you know, it's really weird to me how so many outlets have been covering this, right? If you bomb another country, if you send military forces into another country, and they are not on board with that, that is an act of war. That is not unilateral military action. That is not, a major step. That is an act of war on a sovereign country. You know, I'm throwing that out there. I know the United States has gotten real used to drone warfare, and just kind of, for whatever reason, people in power in our country don't seem to consider it warfare to bomb another country, but I don't think that's going to fly with Mexico. God. Now, on a personal note, guys, just real quick before that, this is insane. This is maybe the most insane thing I've seen so far. This is a new piece of legislation in Congress, H.R. 238. To amend the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act to clarify that artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies can qualify as a practitioner eligible to prescribe drugs if authorized by the state involved and approved, cleared, and or authorized by the Food and Drug Administration and for other purposes. And let me tell you, that is the most insane set of words strung together I've ever seen in a piece of legislation. Okay? They want AI to be your goddamn drug prescriber. Now, will this pass? Genuinely, I have no idea. It's being proposed by Representative Schweikert of Arizona. Arizona popping up an awful lot today. Yeah, what will that $500 billion server farm do? Yeah. They want your doctor to be an AI assistant, guys. There is no fucking way. There is no amount of threats or, like, there's no way I would allow ChatGPT to prescribe me medication. They've already used AI to write mushroom foraging books that encourage people to eat poisonous mushrooms. Okay? I do not trust medical advice from an AI for a goddamn second. All right? This is going to end with blood on people's hands? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is going to get so many people killed or permanently disfigured or, like, you know, permanently maimed. There are going to be so many lawsuits, but the people responsible for this are not going to ever see justice. Ugh, God. It's just so dumb. Additionally, folks, let's just play this quick clip here.
Do you expect to ask Congress for additional aid for North Carolina and California?
It will be direct. In other words, the aid will go through us. So rather than going through FEMA, it will go through us. And I think maybe this is a good place to start. Because, and in all fairness to the governor, and in all fairness to everybody else, FEMA was not on the ball. And we're going to turn it all around. Yes.
A lot of Americans.
Do you expect to ask Congress?
Yeah, so basically what Donald Trump is saying there in his bumbling way is that FEMA will be bypassed for aid, and instead aid is going to come directly from the executive branch of the US government. So he is going to strangle aid to blue states in order to exert control over them. That's effectively what he's going to do. If a disaster hits, you know, California, New York, and he's going to pressure them to adopt Republican laws, to adopt, you know, shit. It is very clearly and nakedly, like, I mean, I struggle to find any other words for it than criminal, but it's basically like a mafia technique, you know, like, yeah, you know, you want some relief, you gotta come kiss the ring, all right? And on top of this, guys, there's a lot rolling out right now when it comes to DEI, and I just wanted to share with you how a lot of corporations and companies are rolling over when it comes to the new Trump administration and its war on DEI, right? And this hits like someone I know personally from my days reporting on video games, but like from Jessica Cogswell, have had two friends contact me today to tell me their workplace / their friend's workplace started firing DEI hires today. One of the emails sent to a person let go read, records indicate you were hired in part due to being a Jew. How is this fucking real? How is this legal? I'm so angry, I'm sick. A lot of these companies are obeying in advance in order to try and ingratiate themselves to power. And guys, this is not someone who is prone to making things up. This is a well-known like journalist who has written for Giant Bomb, Kind of Funny, Uproxx, Paste, Collider, Game Informer, Uppercut. People are being let go. In fact, some of you may remember Alex Van Aken, who wrote one of the songs that I play on my stream sometimes. Okay? Yeah, here we go. Y'all may have heard this. You may remember this, right? It's very soothing. That was done and performed by Alex Van Aken, and I just wanted to share with you guys this. The reason my wife is unemployed right now is because she discovered 2 fellow recruiters at her company actively discriminating against a single mother for a job role. The man she called out got a promotion 2 days later and laid her off immediately because she wasn't a good fit. Be wary. You know, like, be careful. I'll just read what he wrote here. Be wary of the personal information you give to recruiters. There are absolutely bad actors in the space, especially at small firms where there is less oversight. And that is true now more than ever, okay? That is true now more than ever. Be careful about the information you give out about yourself, because, frankly, a lot of these companies are scared and they're looking to put a knife in someone's back if it gets them any amount of clout, any amount of legitimacy in the eyes of deeply conservative fuckwits. Okay? So I shouldn't tell them my race or my orientation. Don't tell them anything that they're not in, they don't need to know those things. You know? Now, I have talked at extreme length here about a number of really bad things, okay? I know it's been difficult. But I'm going to give you a couple silver linings, all right? You guys ready? You guys ready for the silver linings? Here we go. Number 1 comes courtesy of Ken Klippenstein, and this article titled, "Leakers Declare War on Trump." Okay? In the past 24 hours, over 24 people from across the federal government leaked to me various internal directives and memos killing their agency's DEI programs. One angry official even sent me Elon Musk's new official White House email address. I verified the address belonging to the executive office of the president by sending an email which didn't bounce back. In fact, I've gotten more leaked documents in the past day than I've gotten on any other day ever. And leaks for me were already so commonplace that someone even made a rap about it, which I have not listened to, just real quick.
PD memo that Merrill mentioned briefly.
Yes, according to journalist Ken Klippenstein, he obtained a report
Hold on! Ken Klippenstein, that's an ill rap name. Hold on! Yo, Big K Clip. Yo. Bow, K Clip, nigga, what's up? Yo.
That's a fire name.
Ran up on him in the street, couldn't reach his clip in time. I had to leak it to the press. Like my name was Klippenstein! Don DeMarco, Yo, and then they get a reaction, they gotta repeat the bar 7 times, bro.
10 out of 10. No notes. 10 out of 10, no notes. Government workers are angry, or some in the rank and file anyway. The documents tell a story of both resistance by those who leaked them and obedience by those who wrote them. The leaks are tantamount to a declaration of war against the president and his agenda, which at first glance seems like an affirmation of Trump's claims about the existence of a bureaucratic deep state. But this office uprising is more complicated, as a closer look at the documents reveals. The signatories of these memos, the people enforcing Trump's war on DEI, are themselves civil servants. They are the high-level career bureaucrats currently running these various agencies. They are not Trump political appointees. In other words, federal employees are split. Some, particularly among the rank and file, are mounting a resistance, while the acting directors at the top seem happy to do Trump's bidding. Take the acting Secretary of Veterans Affairs, Todd B. Hunter, who sent the memo on Wednesday to VA staff. Hunter previously held a career position at the Veterans Benefits Administration and remains so in his position as acting secretary, which does not require Senate confirmation. Hunter's case is an interesting one because his agency, the VA, oversees one of the victims of Trump's executive order, the over 1 million American veterans who have service-related disabilities. As several leakers pointed out to me, Trump's order doesn't just target DEI, but accessibility as well. Accommodations countless American veterans rely on. We are taking steps to close all agency diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility offices and end all DEIA-related contracts, Hunter told VA staff in his memo. Beyond the simple cruelty, the directive cuts against one of the VA's core missions, providing care to wounded veterans. You know? The contradictions here are going to bring this all crumbling down, guys. The acting secretary then asks employees to report to him any attempts to undermine Trump's intent, specifically to report any contracts that have been signed since November 5th that obscure the connection between the contract and DEIA or similar ideologies. Failure to report this information within 10 days may result in adverse consequences, he says. Many other memos are similar. The White House sent out a template articulating Trump's wishes from an Orwellian-sounding email account, DEIAtruth@opm.gov, in reference to some kind of truth Gestapo. Each acting secretary or agency head was then given the go-ahead to modify the directive, some of which I've published below. The media has referenced some of these but not published them, depriving the public of details like names of the officials signing them, as described above. We publish what others won't, and if you support that, please become a paid subscriber so we can afford to do more. Oh, and if you're a federal employee, feel free to text me via Signal. Which, yeah. Let's take a look. Who's signing all of these? Oh, Todd B. Hunter, acting secretary of Veterans Affairs. Oh, very, very interesting. What about DHS? Benjamin C. Huffman, on board with this, I guess, acting Secretary of Homeland Security. Janet Petro of NASA. That's disappointing to see from NASA. I know you got a lot of gabies working for you. Let's see, HHS employees from Dorothy A. Fink, living up to her name. From Scott W. Rowell, Deputy Chief of Staff. We've got, of course, here... Secretary of State, Washington, D.C. Interesting stuff here. USAID, Jason Gray. Get fucked. Secretary of the Treasury. Get fucked. Interesting stuff. Now, what's interesting here is that we're already... We're not even through a week, guys. And administration officials are already leaking like a sieve, okay? Like, they are absolutely, like, chomping at the bit to just regurgitate information to anyone in the press. It's actually really impressive. So, I don't know. This is bleak. But at the same time, in the bleakness, the fact that there is this level of, frankly, rejection of the Donald Trump administration gives me some hope, because it can absolutely get worse than this. Like, they can do a lot more damage with what they can leak. And that, I think, gives me hope for where this could go in the next few months. Because keep in mind, guys, midterms start a year from now. 90 days from now, Donald Trump will finally start settling, the margins in the House. But he's still not going to have a big one in the House, which means he can't afford to lose a lot of support. And if people are already willing to leak, like they are right here, well, I'm guessing there are damaging materials somewhere in the U.S. government that would cost him support. Now, one last thing, and this is one last, silver lining. And that is, you know how I've been going on, tangents or tirades, maybe would be a better word for it, to talk about how, Donald Trump is actually in a pretty precarious position right now, despite all the things he has done so far this week, right? Remember what I told you at the beginning of this week, though? That this was going to be the worst week. This was going to be the hardest week. This was going to be the most difficult time of Trump's second term. Because this first week is when he is at his most powerful. Remember, I went in depth on that. Well, guess what? Jacobin also agrees with me, which is, it's nice to see someone validate my analysis. Donald Trump is weaker than he looks. And I think this first paragraph kind of explains my point pretty well. As promised, Donald Trump kicked off his presidency with a show of speed and strength, citing what he called a massive mandate, complete with a powerful win in all 7 swing states in the popular vote. Trump has launched what his allies termed a strategy of shock and awe, alluding to the massive bombing campaign that made way for the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Trump unleashed a blitz of dozens of executive orders on everything from pulling the United States out of global agreements and rescinding Biden-era directives, to laying the groundwork for large-scale purge of federal workforce and taking aim at conservative bugbears like birthright citizenship and wind energy. In short, it seems like the worst fears of what a second Trump presidency would mean are coming true, of an unstoppable right-wing wrecking ball that will leave a very different country behind in the ruins of what is smashed. This is certainly what the president would want his demoralized opposition to believe. But for all the big talk, both Trump's presidency and his political project are more fragile than either side realizes. And this article goes into a lot of the additional points here, which is that, essentially, people underneath Donald Trump all have loyalty to Trump, but they have no loyalty to each other. And Donald Trump has very little ability to actually get them in line. And he has a finite amount of energy to try and do so, right? So basically, the people under him hate each other's guts and are looking for any excuse to stab one another in the back. Point, in fact, being Vivek Ramaswamy being out at Doge, okay? Very funny, but also this is going to continue happening. The people under him are going to do their damnedest to alienate one another in their shuffle to be in Donald Trump's best graces, And that is going to open up opportunities. It's going to lead to folks potentially being expelled from Congress. And also, it's going to be... It's gonna be hard, because as we go forward, time has this thing where as you move forward, things happen. You all might be familiar with that phenomenon. There are going to be crises that arise that the Trump administration is utterly incapable of actually handling. Doesn't matter if it's in a blue state and they're trying to withhold cash in some power play, or if it happens in a red state that they actually care about. Either way, their response is going to be dog shit. And that is going to play to our advantage. All right? It is also going to further alienate Trump's base. It's going to make his underlings fight each other and try and assign blame. And it's also going to deeply demoralize and tire out Donald Trump. It's going to take attention away from all of his, adoring fans, adoring him, worshiping him, And finally, Donald Trump, because of his ideology, because of his priorities, because of the things he wants to do, cannot actually deliver for working class people. Things are not going to get better for folks underneath Donald Trump. They're not going to get any economic stimulus packages this time. They're not going to be, having a stronger social safety net. Their retirements are going to get looted. Their healthcare is going to be coming out of crypto wallets. It's going to get worse, and they're going to hate it. And as we look at all of these things, you have to understand Donald Trump is fighting against the tide of time, right? Meaning that he's at his strongest right now, but he only came into office with a 1.5 margin of victory, 1.5 point margin of victory. Half of what he came into office with last time. He does not have a broad mandate from the base. He does not, in fact, have that much support. And as he fucks up, as he certainly will, that support is going to erode. And understand that what they are doing right now is trying to cow us into complacency. They're trying to basically immobilize us with despair, to get us to look at what he's doing and say, oh my God, it's so much. How could we possibly handle it? And shut down. A gish gallop of hopelessness. I like that, Ms. Milena. Good turn of phrase. And I have to really emphasize this again. He has a very slim margin in the House right now. That slim margin is going to remain slim until the special elections conclude in about 90 days. 85 days now. Okay? Even once those resolve, he's still going to have a small margin in the House of Representatives. There are 400 members in that body. There are people that are going to be we're going to be able to pull some of them away. Like Lisa Murkowski, for example. We're going to be able to pull some folks away from the Republican, adhesive to Donald Trump. And we're going to be able to pull more of them the less powerful he is. And as we go forward,
Trump is adhering to the old adage, if you cannot bedazzle them with brilliance, befuddle them with bullshit.
There you go, Very Knifey Duck. Very good. So, that thin margin is going to be really important because they cannot whip each other into falling in line to save their lives, okay? Yeah, in the Senate, we can pull people like Susan Collins. Yeah, exactly. So what I'm trying to get at here is that as we go forward, the midterms are only 2 years away right now. Only 2 years. Once the midterms hit, it is very likely, and we are going to do everything we can as a community and as leftists to make sure that the midterms flip seats. And once those seats are flipped, he is not going to have Congress behind him anymore, which will be a major roadblock for him doing any fucking thing. Until then, we've got 90 days taken out. And the election season for midterms begins 1 year from now. Okay? 1 year from now. So effectively, Donald Trump has, 1 year, 9 months to get stuff done. Well, he has 1 year to get stuff done right now. Only 9 months to get stuff done after the special elections conclude. So, while it does seem really overwhelming right now, I want to reiterate, this is the worst week. I do not think he can do worse than this. Now, I could be wrong, and that will make this clip very painfully funny, I'm sure, if I am. But that is why we need to be alert. We need to resist at every conceivable step of the way. We need to delay any kind of legal action, any kind of political action or machinations by Republicans during this time period. Now is the most important time to show up in protest in efforts to delay different pieces of legislation, to prolong debate on different pieces of legislation or efforts to, undo the fabric of America. Now is the time to get involved and do something. So what I'm trying to say is, now is not the time to despair. Now is the time to do things, because now is the time when we can actually set ourselves up for success when the midterms roll around. We can limit damage as much as we can right now in order to eke out that victory later. Okay? It's going to get worse. It's just that this week is when things get bad the fastest. I mean, there are more, let me put it this way. There are more bad things that are coming down the pipeline. I think this is the worst that he could do. All of the top line priority items that were the worst he could do have been done. I think that there are bigger things that he's going to attempt to do, like privatize, healthcare, or privatize Medicare, and Social Security. Those are things that I think they're going to try to do. I don't know that they're actually going to have the support to do those things. And additionally, the biggest thing that they're going to be able to do, absolutely, is get the tax cuts. That will be devastating. But this right here, I think, is the biggest attack on civil rights that they're actually going to be able to muster. And everything else is going to be hot air. Yeah, survive, build power, protect the ones you love. The Supreme Court has already been packed. Yeah, but here's the thing. If you delay a court... Do you guys have any idea how long you can delay a court case? Do you guys... I'm sorry. Do you guys have any idea how long you can delay a court case? Like, when we're talking about one court case, right? You can delay that in one court for several months at a time. It has to go through, in order to make it to the Supreme Court, it has to go through all of the courts to make it to the Supreme Court. All I'm saying is, if we have decent lawyers, arguing this in court, we can delay these cases until Donald Trump is no longer president. And if that is the case, those cases can be dropped. Okay? I know you said that, Bill Casey. For fuck's sake, you're not the only person in chat. Yeah. Judges can delay the case, lawyers can delay the case, and honestly, I think that between enough delays and a political resurgence against Donald Trump in 2028, I think that there is a decent chance many of these court cases do not make it to the Supreme Court. You're responding to my comment? There are other people in chat, Bill. There are other people in chat talking about the law and the legal cases. Yeah, I'm reading 3 chats right now, for fuck's sake. Are we gonna get all left-leaning lawyers and judges on board with delays when historically we want cases to proceed quickly? Largely you rely on them being smart enough to know the lay of the land. I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people. A lot of people have the idea that lawyers tend to be very incompetent due to Donald Trump's lawyers being incredibly incompetent. But yeah, a lot of lawyers tend to be pretty smart. And I know I don't look it today, chat. I'm very angry. If I'm lashing out at folks or specifically seeming very frustrated at individuals in chat, it's not because I'm actually upset with you guys per se. I'm upset with the entire situation. And honestly, I feel like dog shit. I feel really bad and really angry, and it's hard to exist. It's not fun being a trans person in 2025. So, basically, guys, we have a lot going for us, even though it doesn't seem like it right now. It doesn't seem like a lot of things are on our side, but I will give you this thing, and this is maybe the most important thing that is on our side. Time. Time is on our side. And so, one of the things I came across, and maybe, it depends on how helpful this may be, from Open Culture here. Discover the CIA's Simple Sabotage Field Manual, a timeless guide to subverting any organization with purposeful stupidity, from 1944. Now, guys, I know a lot of you in chat will say something along the lines of like, what can I do? I'm just a dumb idiot. I'm just a small little bean. I don't know how to do anything real good. Well, guess what? Can you be purposely dumb? Can you pretend to be a moron? Well, guess what? I've got jobs for you. Okay? Let's take a look. I've always admired people who can successfully navigate what I refer to as Kafka's Castle, a term of dread for many government and corporate agencies that have an inordinate amount of power over our permanent records, and that seem as inscrutable and chillingly absurd as the labyrinth the character K navigates in Kafka's last allegorical novel. Even if you haven't read The Castle, if you work for such an entity, or, like all of us, have regular dealings with the IRS, the healthcare and banking system, etc., you're well aware of the devilish incompetence that masquerades as due diligence and ties us all into knots. Why do multi-million and billion-dollar agencies seem unable or unwilling to accomplish the simplest of tasks? Why do so many of us spend our lives in the real-life bureaucratic nightmares satirized in the office and office space? Etc., etc., etc. Let's jump ahead. All right, now declassified and freely available on the CIA website, the manual that the agency describes as surprisingly relevant was once distributed to OSS officers abroad to assist them in training citizen saboteurs in occupied territories like Norway and France. Such people, writes Rebecca Onion at Slate, might already be sabotaging materials, machinery, or operations of their own initiative, but may have lacked the devious talent for sowing chaos that only an intelligence agency can properly master. Genuine laziness, arrogance, and mindlessness may surely be endemic, but the field manual asserts that the purposeful stupidity is contrary to human nature and requires a particular set of skills. The citizen saboteur frequently needs pressure, stimulation, or assurance, and information and suggestions regarding feasible methods of simple sabotage. You can read the full document here. All right. Yeah, here are a few. In organizations and conferences, insist on doing everything through channels. Never permit shortcuts to be taken in order to expedite decisions. Make speeches. Talk as frequently as possible and at great length. Illustrate your points by long anecdotes and accounts of personal experiences. When possible, refer all matters to committees for further study and consideration. Attempt to make the committee as large as possible, never less than 5. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible. Haggle over precise wordings of communications, minutes, and resolutions. Refer back to matters decided upon in the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. Advocate caution, be reasonable, and urge your fellow conferees to be reasonable and avoid haste, which might result in embarrassments or difficulties later on. If you're a manager, in making work assignments, always sign out the unimportant jobs first. See that important jobs are assigned to inefficient workers. Insist on perfect work in relatively unimportant products. Send back for refinishing those which have the least flaw. To lower morale and with it production, be pleasant to inefficient workers. Give them undeserved promotions. Hold conferences when there is more critical work to be done. Multiply the procedures and clearances involved in issuing instructions, paychecks, and so on. See that 3 people have to approve everything where 1 would do. If you're an employee, work slowly. Work slowly. Contrive as many interruptions to your work as you can. Do your work poorly and blame it on bad tools, machinery, or equipment. Complain that these things are preventing you from doing your job right. Never pass on your skill and experience to a new or less skillful worker. And yeah, you can actually just download this thing. And yeah, it's short. Honestly, I think this is great advice. If time is our #1 friend, then if you work in this bureaucracy, be the molasses, you know? Slow it down. Link in chat, here you go. I'll give you guys the easier to read version, I think. Also on Gutenberg. This version is a lot easier on the eyes. There you go. Hope you enjoy Johnny Lillard. Yeah, so basically, yap, delay, shift blame, and be a general, pleasant bureaucratic ass. The Ron Swanson strat. Exactly, Liz Galahad. You got it. Yeah, maybe take the phrase throw a wrench in it more literal now, like accidentally drop things in machinery. Exactly. Or and I think that can apply equally to bureaucratic work. Accidentally lose the memo. Or assign sending the memo, but make sure your employee doesn't BCC, and instead individually sends every email to each person, making sure it's personalized to them in particular. Anyway, I think that we are in a better position than we might be giving ourselves credit for here. And I know that things look really fucking bleak right now. But I think we can make it. And I think that if we dedicate ourselves, each one of us, to doing something to organize political power, be it in our local Democratic Party or in our DSA or in, whatever you want to organize in, I think we have a decent shot here of actually being able to enter into 2026 with a good shot at the midterms of building political power, and 2028 getting this orange fuck out of office. And I want to end on one last thing, okay? One last thing. And that is, I know a lot of people are really worried because Donald Trump has proposed... Oh, sorry, not Donald Trump. A member of the House has proposed a constitutional amendment to allow Trump a third term in office. It's been introduced into the House of Representatives. And I just want you all to understand that there's no way in hell that actually goes anywhere. A lot of what is going to be coming out in the weeks and months ahead is theater. It is Republican theater that means nothing, that takes up time, and is hot air. Even though Donald Trump controls the House and controls the Senate and is the president, he cannot amend the Constitution without 2/3 of Congress. And he doesn't have that. So, he is powerful. Don't get me wrong. But he is not a king, he is not a monarch, and he is not a dictator. At least not yet. So, do not be afraid when you see headlines like this. And when you see people on social media talking about this, and getting really scared, make sure to double check what they're getting scared about. Make sure you do some due diligence before you feed into that in order to see if there's merit to it. Because there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be shocked and who are going to be frightened and who are going to be, overreacting to what is effectively theater for the Republican base. It's a puppet show. It's a jangly set of keys. And I want you all to realize that is going to be happening because Republicans cannot actually tackle the material needs of their constituents. They can't. They're too busy giving billionaires more and more money. They're too busy, making sure each and every one of them is getting, a hand job under the table. All right, like they are incapable of addressing any of this, so they're gonna spend time blowing smoke up their voters' asses. Don't also get smoke blown up your asshole. And I guess with that, I guess that's all I gotta say about that one. Man, what a turn of phrase to throw in there at the very end. Jesus. Have hope and fight hard, guys. We're gonna need both.